Hi guys, this is Danny with Deadwood Revival Design. Here to give you some tips and tricks today for maintenance of chainsaws that are both going to help you when you're utilizing your chainsaw in the field or for milling. What I found actually most recently is that often people don't know really much about maintaining the chainsaws other than just basic, the most basic of things. And I think that it's very important to know as much about the equipment that you're utilizing as possible, because that's going to ensure that you can actually make the most out of your day when you're working. So a couple tips and tricks. So here is my MS460 that we've already utilized in the field. It's coming back, it's actually pretty dirty and it needs some maintenance, and I like to perform maintenance every single time that we use the chainsaw prior to the next use. So starting off, the first thing I'll do when I'm done for the day in the field is I'm going to start by filling the fuel and the oil. Okay, so filling the fuel and the oil is important because I don't want to come out the next day and have to do that in the field. I like everything to be prepared, so the next day when I start, I can get started right away. So that's actually just a good practice. When you're done for the day, make sure to fill your oil and your fuel tank. The next thing I would do is take a look at the filter. So the filter, it's critical for the chainsaw to get good air for it to function properly. Every time you're going to take off the filter, the most important thing is that you choke the chainsaw. So you're going to bring the lever all the way down to choke. Reason being is that's going to close the butterfly in the carb and ensure that nothing gets into the carburetor, and then that could damage the chainsaw pretty badly. Another little safety trick is you can take a piece of some sort of cloth, cut it, and place it in there to kind of further protect it. So putting the chainsaw to the side, we have our putting it to the side, we have the air filter. So the air filter, it's important that you clean the air filter more frequently than just one time a day. I actually, every time I fuel the saw in the field, I will take the filter off and I'll clean it. If you're in the field, you can just bang it out and just try to get the most dust that you can. If you're in the shop, you can use an air compressor. When you're using the air compressor, you don't want to be blowing from the outside in. You actually want to make sure that you're blowing from the inside out. Knock as much of it off as you can initially, and then blow from the inside out, okay? So once you get all that settled, the next step will be removing the bar. So there's a lot of different elements to the chainsaw bar that people often don't know that you need to do in order to keep the bar in proper working order and to maintain it, to make sure that you're getting the most out of your chainsaw. Let's go over a couple of these. So you take your cover plate off. I like to try to place things in an order where I know where everything is. So all of the chainsaw parts that I'm removing, I'll put the cover plate with the bar nuts right on there. Over here I have my filter cover and then the actual filter. Put those together. Now we take our chain off and let's take a look at the bar. So people don't really know how much maintenance is required to upkeep a bar and keep it in proper working order. A couple things that are critical. Number one is the nose sprocket. So you want to make sure that the nose sprocket is clean and it's actually moving freely, so you can actually see if it's moving freely or not. If you so happen to clamp your mill too far up where these rivets are at the very top of the nose sprocket, you will actually cease the sprocket. I've actually done that to one of my bars prior. I was trying to get a little more length, clamped too high up, and now you cease the sprocket, so you'll have to change the tip out. So just be careful of that. So just make sure that this is spinning freely, clear debris. So the next thing you're gonna do is the guide rails. So the bar rail needs to be cleaned. It actually gets filled up with gunk, oil, tree sap, all that kind of good stuff. And the chain is not able to spin freely as it should, or the best way that it can. So you actually take a tool like this. This is a raker gauge, a steel raker gauge, and right here at the tip, it has this handy little part. And so what it is just a straight edge that fits perfectly in this groove, and it will go down, and you can see a lot of debris, oil, gunk that's actually just coming from the one side only at this point. So clean both sides up. And I would also suggest in the field, if at any point during the day you're changing your chain out, that you do this in the field. Again, this is not something that should only be performed at the end of the day. With all of that in that groove, you're not going to be getting optimal performance. So the next thing you're going to do is check for burrs and check for the bar for bend. So these bars actually do bend, and so you want to make sure that when you're utilizing it, you're not tweaking it in any kind of way where it will bend, because if it bends, it's not going to be as good. You can actually ruin a bar permanently. So you can sight down on both sides, make sure that the bar is not bent, and then look for burrs and correct them if they're there. So burrs are kind of at the very lip here of the bar, or very at the edge of the bar. If you feel with your finger, and be careful, sometimes it can be sharp, you can actually feel just a little bit of a ridge right at the lip as you come outward, a little bit of a lip, and that should not be there. That's a burr. So you need to file those in order to maintain the chainsaw bar. All right, so we have a bastard file here that I'm going to use to file down the burrs. And so as you identify where the burrs are, you're going to be filing, you're going to hold the file flat. You don't want to hold it at too much of an angle, because you do not want to change the contour. All we want to do is just shave off that extra ridge that was created. And so I personally do it inwards like this. So I find the area that I want to work, and I go in, pretty flat angle. Go ahead and check on it. In a little more. And actually, that is good. If you do maintenance on the bar frequently, it doesn't really take much to correct them. Looking good. So at this point, the nose sprocket is clean, the rails are clear, and the burrs are filed. So the next thing is going to be to ensure that the oiler inlets are clear. So oil is pumped to the bar through two inlets. So there's an inlet right at the bottom here, a small hole, and one on the other side as well. Those holes get plugged in pretty easily. So I use an air compressor, and I have a little wire brush in the field that I'll make sure that those inlets are clean, because if not, you're not getting a good oil. And it's really important for both when you're cutting and especially when you're milling to be getting good oil through the bar. So once we're done with that, we move on to the actual power head. So personally, I use simple green and a rag and just kind of start working my way around the chainsaw, getting the majority, just the easy dirt that you see out. Sometimes I also use a wire brush and just kind of get around the edges and blow out with a compressor just different areas. You can remove this part right here and just blow this entire area off. Again, making sure that nothing gets into the carburetor. That would be not good news there. So once you take care of this, make sure it's pretty clean and dust free. You don't want to make sure, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want to make sure there's not a bunch of stuff in there. Then you're looking over in this side, and there's a lot of gunk and buildup around here. So go ahead and clean all that. As you're doing that, you can see right around the clutch cover, which is the part that spins around here, covers the clutch. A lot of debris will get caught in there, and that can affect the operation of the saw. So go ahead and get a wire brush and brush around the outer perimeter of the clutch cover. Another point that you're going to want to take a look at is right here. This is where the oil actually enters the bar. You want to make sure that this whole plate, there's a small plate right here where your tensioner screw is at and your tensioner peg. You want to make sure that this plate is clean and free of debris. So You can wipe it, you can brush it a little bit with a wire brush, you can blow it out with a compressor, and that should be good. So another part that we want to inspect on the chainsaw is actually the sprocket. The sprocket's where the chain runs. It actually hooks into the sprocket initially, and that's an item of heavy wear. So it's good to inspect it. If you see that it's the chain starts to create grooves in it and it's no longer flat, you'll have to replace that. It's very simple. There's an E-clip sitting right here. You just take a scrinch, pop the E-clip out. There's a washer next. And after that, you'll grab the sprocket. And you can see that there's some wear there. So you can grab a new sprocket in order to replace that. And while you're here, go ahead and take this clutch drum cover off, and you can see in the inside it's actually quite full of gunk and dirt and debris. So go ahead and clean all of that off, and then again make sure to keep all your parts in order. And in order to put that, you're just going to do the reverse. Another thing to look at that can get replaced, especially if you're already doing your sprocket, is the needle cage bearing. So this little needle cage bearing, they actually wear with time, and it's not a high dollar item, and it's pretty easy to replace. So in reverse order, needle cage bearing, clutch drum cover, and once you place that in there, you have to spin it until you hear it click. There, so now that you hear it click, sprocket, a new sprocket. This situation, I'm not going to change it, but and back to the E-clip. So there you have it. Those are a couple of tips and tricks for chainsaw maintenance. I think that it's critical to maintain your chainsaw, know your equipment. It's going to save you time in the field. It's going to save you money in the long run, and it's going to extend the life of the equipment. So it's really important to get more familiar with it than just the basics. And so this is kind of the next step up. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and feel free to reach out with any other further questions. Have a good one.